एवरी डे। गोमती नगर की रोशनी में हम जगमगाते हैं, अमीनाबाद की भीड़ में भी हम ही नजर आते हैं। सुबह को शर्मा जी की चाय सुड़सुड़ाते हैं, शाम को कुलचा नहारी कबाब दबाते हैं, चिकन की बारीकियां हम परखते हैं और दाल की पकी दशहरी पर जान छिड़कते हैं। हम छोटे शहर के लोग हैं जनाब, पर हम बड़े ख्वाब देखना जानते हैं। नजरें झुकाने की अदा है हम में और नजरें मिलाने का रुतबा भी। We were creators then, we are creative now. We know where we have to go and we know just how. We are Lucknow and Lucknow is now. Visit nowlucknow.com.
RG Infracity Private Limited now presents a unique new age lifestyle at RG Euphoria.
सब कहते हैं दिल की सुनो, लेकिन जब दिल की सुनने की कोशिश की तो किसी के गले से नीचे नहीं उतर पाया। घर में अब्बा का डर और अम्मी की फिक्र।
तू चल, बढ़ चल।
मोहल्ले के हर नुक्कड़ पर बैठे समाज के ठेकेदार, लड़की को स्पोर्ट्स बाइक पे देख, मर्दों की मर्दानगी को पहुंचती चोट और उनके ताने।
तू चल, तू बढ़ चल, बढ़ चल।
मैं चलूंगी तुम घूरोगे, मैं हारूंगी तुम हंसोगे, ताने मारोगे। लेकिन 234 की स्पीड पर ये सब मुझे सुनाई नहीं देगा।
Whoever coined the phrase "time flies" was certainly not heading a FLO chapter. For us, it doesn't fly. It evaporates, dissipates, vaporizes in the blink of an eye. It is January and the past 8 months are now just a kaleidoscope of vivid memories of carefully planned events and initiatives. We began this quarter with a power-packed event which was both riveting and inspiring. We are extremely proud to host a face-to-face with Dr. Kiran Bedi as a part of the Imminent Women series. This National Sports Day, FLO Lucknow is happy to host the sports icon and Padma Shri awardee PV Sindhu as our next speaker. We also have the brilliant opportunity to host the celebrated author Chitra Banerjee Divakarni, who is best known for her books The Mistress of Spices and The Palace of Illusions. Our session with financial wizard and economic visionary Radhika Gupta, CEO of Edelweiss Asset Management Company, was a resounding success, appreciated by members from all the chapters. This session was expertly moderated by FICCI FLO past president Vinita Bimbit. Now coming to the national initiatives, of which Village Adoption Program or VAP is one of the most important. This year, FLO Lucknow collaborated with NGO Kshitij Education and Rural Development and is all set to sign the MOU with the local MLA to formally adopt the village Purelal Shah in the Shahjahanpur district. As a part of the national tie-up with Women on Wings, they conducted a series of virtual workshops with Kshitij. Based on the SCOT and customer analysis done in the previous quarter, WOW formulated a detailed prioritization model and action plan. A specially customized business model canvas was then built to align marketing strategies. These strategies were actively employed to promote Moonj products, a specialty of the area. We were involved in improving packaging and marketing of their agricultural products like cold-pressed oils, organic foodstuffs like dals, etc., and even selective processed food items. We have already substantially augmented their sanitary napkin production by connecting them not only to members but also the local army canteens. FLO Lucknow helped augment the livelihood of women in the village by teaching them a new skill of making, decorating and selling diyas this Diwali. With our help, these women sold over 7,000 diyas, generating an additional income of over 80,000 rupees. It was a proud moment for our chapter to announce a strategic tie-up of FLO Lucknow chapter and Shri Ram Swaroop Memorial University for the purpose of collaboration between our incubation cells. FLO Lucknow was elated to launch its very own mentorship cell on the 10th of August. Currently, we have two sets of mentors and mentees working together closely to enhance and augment their businesses. As a part of a national initiative, Sleepwell Foundation conducted two 4-day interactive online workshops. These workshops were conducted by MacLeod certification on how to start a business. FLO Lucknow helped enroll 208 students from the state of Uttar Pradesh. Carrying forward a highly appreciated series of Smart Up Saturdays, 5 webinars were organized by FLO Lucknow to digitally equip members. Our next program was aimed at enhancing placement skills of young adults above 16 years about to join the workforce. This week-long program was attended by 24 students. Dr. Amrish Mittal, an endocrinologist and a Padma Bhushan awardee, opened our eyes and informed us all about the two autoimmune and lifestyle disorders in great detail. Priya Prakash, founder CEO of Health Set Go, spoke to us about her journey and the softwares and tools which can be used to track and improve healthcare of students at school. We organized a 2-day workshop with the celebrated home stylist Mrs. Shalini Beriwal. FLO Lucknow and FLO Kanpur jointly organized a unique workshop to learn about the Vastu tips and tricks of harnessing the power of Vastu from the expert astrologer Vastu specialist Ms. Jay Madan. Under the Live, Learn and Laugh series, we organized a workshop on unlocking Kama Ayurveda's beauty secrets. FICCI FLO Lucknow organized FLO Biscuits, a virtual competition to recognize and reward children who have shown exceptional entrepreneurial skills and started a business during the lockdown. FLO Biscuits was lauded for being a unique and one-of-a-kind initiative with over 100 entries from all over India. Mission Shakti, a UP government initiative to ensure safety and dignity of women, found resonance within our chapter. FLO Lucknow has conducted 3 major workshops to educate working women on the issues of women's safety at home and the workplace. Besides these, one of my most prized achievements was creating the video to honor the unsung women freedom fighters of India. This beautiful video was released by General V.K. Singh, Minister of State, in the presence of our President, Janabi Phukan. Before I end, I would like to thank my President, Janabi Phukan, for her vision and guidance, and the Presidium and my fellow chapter chairs for their wisdom and encouragement. Success doesn't come with what you do occasionally, but what you do consistently, and that has been one of my most cherished mantras. With such wonderful women by my side, I promise to deliver consistently in the future as well. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all for this session. My name is Deepali Chopra. I'm a member of FLO Lucknow Kanpur chapter and your moderator for this evening. Let me extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished guest speaker, Ms. Tara Kaushal, all the governing body members, Chairperson Lucknow chapter, Ms. Puja Garg, our committee members, our FLO family members, and all the guests present here. Let me start with introducing FLO to all our guests over here. FLO, or FICCI Ladies Organization, has 17 chapters pan-India with members comprising entrepreneurs, professionals, and corporate executives. FLO plays an active role as an enabler of women empowerment through entrepreneurship, development, and professional excellence. One of the primary agenda is to help create women entrepreneurs while providing sustainable means of livelihood to women at the grassroots level. We have grown in the last 5 years of existence rapidly and are committed to working towards women empowerment and upliftment. Our motto, one dream, one team, one win, sums up our commitment of working together to achieving lasting results. I'd now like to request our chairperson, Ms. Puja Garg, to please come up and welcome the guest and open the session. Puja, over to you, please.
Thank you, Deepali. A very warm welcome to Ms. Tara Kaushal, to all the past presidents and governing body members, to fellow FLO members from across India, and to all our guests watching us live on Facebook. There can possibly be no other topic which holds greater relevance to an organization of women, among whom many are mothers to daughters. Ever since we gained consciousness and a working understanding of the world, the threat of sexual violence hangs over the head of women in our country. In fact, in the entire world, like a proverbial sword. Consciously or unconsciously, this threat governs a majority of our choices and decisions. Even the most basic ones, like what to wear, what timelines to follow, which mode of transport to choose, and where to live, etc. Even then, in spite of all precautions, rapes are today a permanent headline feature. Rape is unlawful sexual activity, typically involving sexual intercourse done forcibly or under threat of injury against a person's will. It is a global problem of epidemic proportions. While many countries have laws against the act of sexual assault and violence, many of them are insufficient, inconsistent, and not systematically enforced. It is estimated that approximately 35% of women worldwide have experienced sexual harassment in their lifetime. United Nations statistical report compiled from government sources showed that more than 250,000 cases of rape or attempted rape were recorded by police annually. In India alone, as many as 90 reported rape assaults are recorded every single day, let alone the unreported ones, which are huge in numbers. The reasons for it are numerous and are rooted in the patriarchal setup of our society. Many of us believe that sexual abuse of women is mainly limited to the economically and educationally weaker sections of the society. However, this lockdown, with unprecedented increase in sexual crimes against women, debunked that myth too. So what are the real reasons which powers this many-headed hydra of rape culture in our society? What is the psyche of the person driven to commit this most heinous of crimes against a woman? Our celebrated journalist and author and our speaker for the day, Ms. Tara Kaushal, aims to explain just that. I welcome you, Tara, and before we begin, we would like to present you with a small token of our appreciation. IT team, please display the green certificate.
We at FLO like to honor our guests by planting a tree in their name in association with Trees for Tribals. You can track your tree on grow.trees.com with the unique identification number given on the green certificate. This is our small way towards contributing towards a greener tomorrow.
Thank you, Tara. I really appreciate you joining us all the way from Australia and taking us through your investigative journey. Thank you. Over to you, Deepali.
Thank you, Puja. So before we start off, how about we introduce Tara a little more about the book and the journey. So for all our guests over here, especially all those who have not had a chance to read her book and not know so much about Tara, although she doesn't really need that kind of introduction, especially after the book. Tara Kaushal is a writer and media consultant. She was recognized and awarded for her incisive journalism and social commentary. As the growing conversation about sexual violence is getting more meaningful and nuanced, Kaushal is one of the voices at its forefront in India. With the reported count of 106 rapes daily, forget about the unreported cases every day, Tara Kaushal's book investigates answers to the urgent question, why men rape? She conducted an extensive undercover investigation to grasp the socio-psychological genomes, unfurling the profile of a rapist. A daring venture indeed, in a country ranked as one of the most unsafe for women. Tara's investigation included traveling to the houses of these 9 men, her subjects in the book, chosen from different regions, religions, socio-economic strata to meet and interview them, and spend all this time with not just these men, with her families, day and night at end. She under the guise of producing a film. So basically she went undercover to spend all this time with these men, the 9 subjects. To solve a problem, they say you have to understand it. Why men rape, and Indian cover investigation, a new book authored by Tara Kaushal, deconstructs the very complex subject of rape, chipping away at the falsehoods of patriarchy that is perpetrated. Kaushal's book is not just about the attitudes, it's a deep dive into the rapist's mind and the socio-cultural reality that birthed him. Before, without further ado, should we just start off with the questions, Tara, or would you like to say something just a little bit before we start off?
No, absolutely. Thank you very much for that very warm and profusely praised full introduction. And I'm looking forward to your questions.
Right. So the first question. As a budding journalist in India, where one normally tends to gravitate towards the more soluble subjects such as drama, thriller, sports, or non-fiction even, what made you choose such an unexplored and sensitive topic such as, rape, Tara?
Deepali, well, as someone who's read the book, you know the answer to this, but I'm a survivor. I was raped at 4 or 5 by my gardener, and somehow sexual violence followed me through my young adult life. So when I started writing and when I got into, when I became a writer, a professional one at that, it was the first topic that I started to explore. And I've explored it all these years in various forms as a subset of my feminism, but also with a growing understanding of how rape impacts women every day and our lives every day. And it's not only the act of rape, it's the fear of rape and what I call sexual terrorism. But of course, the actual trigger for writing this book was the Delhi gang rape, simply because, while the rest of the world empathized with or sympathized with Jyoti Singh Pandey, I feel Jyoti Singh Pandey could have been me, because 10 years before, I was a college student who traveled to Delhi University by bus. I was molested every day. It greatly impacted my attendance, though I loved college. So to me, it was I think writing this book has been the culmination of a very long personal and professional journey. And that's why I started working on it. I started reading for it right after the Delhi gang rape. So in 2013 is when I decided that I would now read exclusively about gender violence. I didn't think I knew enough to write a book about it. But 3 years before, which is 2017, is when I took it on full time and started just working only on this book.
So I remember reading it somewhere. You got this idea, I think back in 2012, and that's when you, yeah. Right. So Tara, what did you expect to achieve with this book? So yes, we did. You just told us why, but what did you really expect to achieve with this book? So do tell us a little more about the entire idea, behind writing this book, and how did you really go about it, other than, of course, you reading and researching into it, but just tell us a little more about that.
Okay. Well, so the conversation about why men rape is fairly nuanced in academia and has always been. The fact that, you don't blame the victim, you It's been, this understanding has been around for a really long time. It's just that given deep-seated patriarchy, that is not the kind of conversation people have. We're still talking about, where was she, what was she wearing, was she drunk, who was she with? And to me, if people engage with nothing more than the title of my book, it is doing a service to put back the onus where it belongs, on the men who perpetrate the violence, not the women who feel like prey. So to me, that was the primary agenda. My agenda is also, I mean, I have to say, I'm not, well, now I may be considered an expert, but when I started out, I wasn't an expert. My agenda was to take what was important, all of this data that has been in academia, and take it to lay people and say, maybe we're looking at the entirely wrong gender. So let's start there. And then let's actually break it down, because problem solving 101, in order to solve a problem, you have to understand it first. Now, when I decided to do this, the one thing that I knew I would have to do is to actually meet men who have raped. And I didn't want to do this in prison, because I think prison is not representative of the kind of men who rape. And we know this through Me Too. We know this through just our general conviction numbers and our judiciary. We know this all along, that rape is not that men in jail for rape are not representative of the entire type of men who rape. Also, men don't exist in, or people don't exist in isolation. They're a product of their environment. So I wanted to study that. In order to do this, I identified men who had raped through their victims, through I don't know, through the police, through NGOs, through a whole host of other avenues. And I told them I was researching a film, and I would like to spend time with them and understand their, lives. And this was only a subset, because I do think I have a problem with the word rapist, because the men who rape, or anybody, is not only that. They have other aspects to their lives. So I wanted to understand their lives in totality, which is what I did. I was undercover with them, and I did this from 2017 is when I did the first 5 subjects, and 2018 is when I did the next 4. And then I spent the whole of 2019 just writing the book. And it came out in the middle of last year, in the middle of 2020.
Yes, so my next question being, so like you already mentioned, you had to, spend a lot of time with these 9 subjects of yours. Something not easy, something not we can't really think of. None of us, I can safely say, can ever imagine spending time with these perpetrators of any kind of crime, right? But you spend so much of time with these people. You lived among them, you ate among them. What was it like a woman, being a woman, spending that kind of man, in such close proximity to these men? What was the experience? How was it like? Just talk about that, Tara.
So while I have to say, when I was going into an undercover thing, when I was going into it, I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't afraid. I have this very, maybe it comes from my father being a naval officer or whatever. I have a very work is work attitude to things. This is what I'm doing. This is how I have to do it. I'm going by. And so when I was going into it, I wasn't thinking about it. And when I was in it, there was so much adrenaline, and there was so much hype. You're so hyper aware of your surroundings and of the men, and where you are and what you're saying, and keeping track of your own story and all of these things, that I didn't think I had any time to deal with fear or any of those things. But of course, there was trauma. And I think where by the end of my first round of undercover investigation, so at the end of 2017, I was super depressed. And there was trauma because I had to extend empathy to these men, the men who had raped. But clearly, my empathy lies with survivors and victims and the women. So having to balance this and my own trauma and the vicarious trauma. At the end of 2017, I was gutted, and I'm glad that in the early parts of 2018, I was away writing a little bit as well. But you know, at the end of it, and I've just gone into therapy last year because I realized there is a cumulative trauma that I am addressing. But at the end of it, there's also a great amount of empowerment. Writing this book was a feminist act. It was physically and metaphorically reclaiming a space. In some instances, I was in spaces that no woman has ever gone before. And I mean that literally, like, places that were just all male spaces. A drinking adda in some village in Madhya Pradesh, or even a place in Kamathipura, which is our local Mumbai red light district. I was in this bar and the cops came and chucked me out because they're like, women are not allowed inside this bar. What are you doing here? So to me, all of these, it is also very empowering to have taken something that was so negative and to actually make it a force for good. So yeah, it's been a very complicated journey, it's been an emotional roller coaster as well. But I'm here, and the book's done well, and I think it's achieved or is achieving what I set out to have it achieve.
No, absolutely. And I must say, you are one daring woman, Tara, seriously. And I'll say it again. And this is something we've seen time and again, on the TV screens and through media. I remember seeing some sort of a media, somewhere, I don't remember, so there was some forward where this journalist was trying to kind of fight off with these cops, and she was trying to get into a space where no journalist was, allowed to enter. And I was like, you're a daring woman. But that was just about 1 hour. This woman kept trying for 1 hour, and then I think she just kind of gave up. But having to do something like that for days and night, and like you said, going into those men's spaces basically, and all those addas, can't imagine. Right. So that being said, the next question, again about your 9 subjects. What was, I just need to know, in terms of their mindset and characteristics, was there anything common among your subjects, the 9 subjects, these 9 men, that you can talk about? As in what way does social conditioning perpetuate rape culture in the country like ours, in terms of, through these subjects, if you could just talk about?
So the book, I've explored the question of gender violence in my book through the framework of social class. So I've decided, I've said that there are various reasons that men rape, and they're unique. And the way I've kind of bunched them is to look at men from the lowest to the highest social class. Now, social class is beyond economic class. It is, it includes education and location and culture and all of these factors that I've laid out in the book. But one of the things, if you ask me the things that I found in common among the men that I studied, and dare I say among a lot of Indian men, is patriarchy. There's anger. There's a lot of anger. We're a culture that encourages anger. And I say this because, look at our movies. Where it comes to the humble bedroom scene, there's so much anger and so much censorship, but increasing amounts of violence is completely okay. And then there's also what I found, the third thing that I found common among all the men was power issues. There seems to be, and I think this is again, maybe cultural, maybe it's a factor of our population, our class struggles, our caste struggles, power issues seem to be common even with the most powerful of men that I studied, including this very famous doctor who perpetrated a really gruesome rape, a rape that has left his victim in a wheelchair, um, and who's not ever been in jail, of course. But power issues seem to be common among all the men that I studied. Um, this is one of the reasons that I am so against criminal profiling, because I feel that it's all sorts of men rape. And we need to understand how these factors, whether it's power, anger, sex, patriarchy, how they manifest among different men of different classes. Yeah, so that's the answer: power, anger, and patriarchy.
Right. So, taking it further from that last question. So, my next one is, in the case of some of your subjects, there was a complete lack of understanding of what rape really was. Fundamentally, they just did not see anything wrong forcing themselves on women. Do you think any of them realize the barbarity of their act, or are they all so unconscious of their savagery that they are what we all can safely call unhumans?
So I don't agree with the unhuman or monster characteristics, because then again we go back into criminal profiling. But let me say this: one of the biggest, the most surprising things that I learned through this book is that there is absolutely no understanding of what rape is. And I mean this in the most basic sense, right? Here we are, you and I, we talk about stealthing, and yes means yes, and no means no, and female empowerment, and all of these very nuanced ideas about gender violence. On the other hand, so early in my research, I was sitting in some fort in rural Maharashtra, and I was reading, and my spouse was reading, and these college age boys came up to me, and they were like, "What you doing?" And I said, "I'm writing this book about rape," and they were like, "What? About what?" So then I was like, okay, let's sit and chat, because I felt that this was an opportunity for me to understand them and for them to understand me. So these I think it was 5 or 6 boys, they sat, and then one of them said, "Pata hai kya, Didi?" I said, "What?" They said, "Kisi ko problem kya hai na ki kisi ko pata hi nahi ki rape kya hai." And to me, that was a huge revelation, because they had been hearing about it and reading about it, and it was all over the news. But what was rape? They had no idea. Was it what had been done to Nirbhaya? What had been done to Jyoti Singh Pandey? Was that rape, which involved so much violence? Or was it all of this gruesome stuff that they read in papers? But we know that's not it. We know rape is actually is 95% of rape is not stranger rape. It is committed by someone known to the victim. That 99.1% of rapes committed by the current spouse are not reported to the cops. Of course, there was absolutely no understanding of marital rape. And this was particularly true with the men of the lowest social class, where the understanding of, or their understanding of life and the rules actually came primarily from religion and society. And religion and society, having a foundation in patriarchy, then does not allow women any rights. The right to say no absolutely does not exist within a marriage. So I don't think a lot of the stuff that they ended up telling me as conversations about their general experience of sexuality and their sex lives, was a lot of it was rape. They They admitted to having sex with their wives when the wives said no for reasons including pain. But that they didn't see as rape at all, because that's not what they understood as rape. And this, to me, is a big and an easy thing to change. If you're perpetrating rape because you don't know it's rape, because you don't believe and have never been taught that women have the right to say no, it's something that can be changed quite easily. But we don't have any sort of comprehensive sexuality education, and this is not happening anytime soon. But yeah, I don't think these men saw what they were doing as rape. So that I think is a problem. And they don't then see it as barbaric or traumatic.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that really explains the problem so much. I think there's a huge void in that space of kind of understanding, what really rape is. Talk about the marital rape. I mean, that is something still a lot of people are even unaware of. I mean, people are like, marital rape? Married, of course. Hello, there's no question of rape.
Absolutely. Shadi ke baad rape kaisa is one of the basic questions that kept coming to me. Like,
right.
What do you mean rape? Rape is done by strangers. It's not done within a marriage. What is this? So yeah, these are things that need to change as well.
Right. Great. So next one. Through your study again into these 9 subjects, you show that most of these men are either the casualty of patriarchy, where they just simply objectify the women. And so they feel it is just their right to force themselves on these women and just take whatever they want from women, because they don't see women as anything but objects, or even humans for that matter. Or these men are the victims of rage and violence themselves. And so they perpetrate because they want to assert power and claim power and assert pain. Both, in my according to me, both are brutal extremities. Do you think there is any hope within such cases of any kind of reforms in both these cases?
I do think that reform is certainly an option. I did see a few of my subjects, and I think one of them is in jail, not for sexual violence, but for some political crime. The man in Bhopal is in jail, or was in jail when I last heard of him. But I do think that somebody like him is beyond reform. There are people beyond reform. But there are certain men who have raped who are certainly open, especially, for instance, the kind of men who do not understand, who love their wives and do not understand that, love I use in quotes, but who do not understand the brutality or the damage that has been caused by their actions, because they have never been taught to empathize with women as complete human beings. There is a certain amount that can be done with these men to reform them. But I have to say, I leave most hope for the next generations and younger men. Like my first subject, the one that I start my book with, Deepu Raja Yadav, who was part of a gang rape that he committed with his cousin. There was a lot of peer pressure, and now he's in a marriage and he loves his wife. But again, there is marital rape. I do think that someone like him could be reformed. He was only 18 when I met him, and I do think there was chance for reform there. But we need to look now at, dealing with the problem that we've caused, the adult men that exist today, that through their actions are considering or have committed rape, and we need to see what we can do there and how we can intervene there. And that's a problem, because how do you access these men? How do you change them? And there are lots of NGOs that are working on this, and there are lots of things that are being changed through the work of these wonderful NGOs. But to me, I think we need to focus on the next generation. And I feel that the sooner we decide to do that, the sooner there is political and personal and social will to change this, the better, because it's going to take 20 years of decision, and then, you know, going through the school system and making a whole new generation of boys, or going through families and seeing change in families. But we don't see that will. And so reform is a very loaded word. And I think we need to work on prevention. And that is my agenda. We need to prevent the creation of men who think rape is okay.
Yeah, sticky one, yes. But yes, I totally, right. So, and like you said, 20 years, yeah. But yeah, okay, fine. It is sticky. So yes, we kind of need to focus on the prevention. We all the mothers over here, I think we all are doing in some sort of a way. Of course, we need all the help from people who, you know, I can safely say expert professionals like you who've kind of gone into that space, delved into that entire you know, space, and has accumulated so much knowledge. Of course, we need to keep going back to people like you, and understand where and how we can do better in terms of bringing up our own children, and not just boys, but of course girls. And again, not just girls, but again, boys, you know, if you know what I mean. So yes, I do agree with prevention, and it's just the entire system that we have to go through. Bringing to the next question, leading from the last one, of course, you know, we all have delved into many aspects and reasons of why men really rape, such as patriarchy, the masculine privilege, the way children, that is boys versus girls, are brought up, domestic abuse, caste, economic disadvantages, and so on. But out of all the reasons that you have uncovered and explained, what would you say is the most important one, Tara? The one that causes the most damage?
I mean, patriarchy is the umbrella stuff for a lot of the umbrella term for a lot of the things that you describe. But I'm gonna say this, that, you know, okay, so the older version of, when you look at the older view of violence or sexual violence, or indeed any kind of violence, is that you need to look at gender, you need to look at the person as less than human in order to hurt them, right? So that's why we keep saying the sooner we, I mean, that's why we use the words like, you know, objectify women. And the idea is that if you can personify or make people see their victims as fully human, you are going to be able to evoke the best kind of attitudes in them, and they're going to realize that they're causing hurt, and they will then stop perpetrating violence, including sexual violence. But the newer version, and when I say newer, I'm talking about only in the last 10 years, the newer idea of the cause of violence, including sexual violence now, is the idea that it is not because people see their victims as less than human that they are able to cause violence. They actually see the victim as fully human, capable of experiencing pain and shame and all of these things, which is why there is pleasure in hurting them. Now, to me, this is so when I first encountered this newer version of looking at violence, this newer way of exploring violence, it changed the way I saw things. And to me, the only thing that I have said so far that I think in the book that is unique is that both things are true. You can look, if you look at a victim as less than human, as an object, that causes sexual violence, because you're able to look at your wife and say, I know I don't hate her or anything, I feel no rage, but in a choice between her desires and my desires are more important. So that causes violence through patriarchy, because in the balance sheet, a woman, your wife, is less important than you are. But the other way is when you feel rage and anger and you're asserting power, um, you are trying to control this person and you see them as fully human. And that is when that so to me, violence comes out of an individual perpetrator's dynamic with the individual victim at that particular point in time. Now, patriarchy causes violence in the second way, because you see a woman as perfectly equal, as perfectly human, and you are trying to assert your anger and your power on her. And that's patriarchy as well. So in that sense, patriarchy kind of covers both ways of looking at sexual violence, whether as an object or as a fully human being that you want to control, because you should and you have the right to as a man under patriarchy. So patriarchy is my big one, and yeah, that's what I hope to change.
Great. Um, so, Tara, it's not as if these crimes or sexual violence or any of those things happen only in India. Of course, they happen abroad as well, anywhere in the world. But what, according to based on your research and observation, what, according to you, are the top 3 or maybe top reasons, you could say, any number of reasons, most prevalent in India, in our country, if you talk about that?
So one of the things that keeps coming up is whether sexual violence is actually increasing or it's not. Okay. Are we only reading more about it in the newspaper and it's always been percent? Has it only increased in proportion to the population? Or has the definition of sexual violence, has the definition of rape become broader, and therefore we think it's increased? Now, in the absence of numbers about gender violence, because we don't know what is reported, what is not, in previous generations and versus now. We don't know, the definition has changed. So it's difficult to ascertain the numbers. But in the absence of that, I'm going to say that sexual violence has definitely increased, despite the population and proportion and all of that. Sexual violence has increased. And to me, there are several reasons. One, of course, is we have no comprehensive sexuality education. So while we have all of these women, girls that are being empowered and taught to be empowered through the generations, while we have that, we have no one teaching the boys how to deal with empowered women who know their rights and their bodies and stuff. So none of this is happening. The other thing is the proliferation of porn. Now, a previous way of looking at porn was that, through masturbation, men are getting it out of their systems. There's no need for violence. But the other thing is, porn is also contributing to this muddled idea of what is rape. And is that what sex is? If that's the only idea of how men are learning about sex, is that what sex is? And there's rape videos. So is that normal sex? So porn is definitely contributing to the objectification of women, to the muddied idea of what consent is. The other thing is, to me, is this idea of contagion. Now, there's a lot of studies across the world about how when there's suicide bombers or there's violence or there's a school shooting, it causes a ripple effect in society, even suicide. But now there started to be a lot of studies about how this also causes a ripple effect in rape. And we see it. We see the deadening palates. Why, after the Kathua rape case, why was the name of the 8-year-old victim trending on porn sites? Why was the name of the Telangana rape victim who was murdered, burnt and murdered? Why was her name trending on porn sites? It's because there is contagion and palettes are changing. That's what now arouses some people. So there is this problematic idea. There's also a lot of anger, and one of the reasons that men feel anger today and feel angry and disempowered is because of women. They feel women are taking their rights in the world. And women are some of the causes of their anger, and violence against us is one of the consequences. So yeah, to sum up, there's a lack of sexuality education, there is pornography, there is contagion, and there's anger, so much anger, due to a lot of reasons, but also women. But women bear the brunt of the consequences.
Yes, women do. Okay, now this one is an interesting one. I'm sure everybody wants to ask this, but I'll ask this one. Do you think our choice of clothes, is responsible in any way in perpetuating to violence, as portrayed, of course, in the movies, the media, and even in a lot of our households, by the way? So.
Not at all. Not at all. Of course, I think that nothing a victim, whether it's male or female, I think nothing a victim can do should result in sexual violence. So of course not. Nothing. But also, there's this whole idea that you will be safe in your home, or you will be safe at a certain hour, or you will be safe in certain clothes. And that we know is not true. The positioning of home and certain clothes as a safe space is certainly not true at all. So we know this. So apart from just dismissing this idea of clothes being responsible for rape, and apart from me saying, of course, it's always the perpetrator who's responsible for rape and any other violence. Apart from saying that, in general, we know that it's not going outside in short clothes that causes the most rape. Most rape happens at home with a spouse. A lot of rape happens, 95% of rape happens by acquaintances, certainly not strangers on the street. And it's not your clothes that are responsible at all.
Now that we needed the answer to that, but I just needed to have this one out. So talking about patriarchy, Tara, going from there again, there are modern women, girls, who wear pants or skirts, who follow Western culture, who roam around freely on their own. And then there are stay-at-home women, stay-at-home mothers, wives, women who play traditional roles of Indian wives and mothers. What and how much, according to you, is the contribution to these different women through their varied social roles to the strengthening of the patriarchy?
So I'm going to give an answer that's going to offend a lot of people. But the truth is that all traditional systems, all systems that are traditional are made by man. They're literally man-made. So when they're man-made, they have been written by men, for men, and reinforce the patriarchy. This, to me, is very clear, and women, all sorts of women, also reinforce patriarchy. It's not, patriarchy is an ideology that men and women are different and men are superior. And it's not like women don't endorse this ideology. In fact, we hear about it all the time, mothers-in-law, and we hear about the role that mothers-in-law play in marriages and in reinforcing patriarchy. I'm also a kind of burn it all to hell kind of feminist. So I do think that all traditional systems need to be burned to the ground, and reinvented, reimagined, to include genders other than male. So when women make what is called the patriarchal bargain, and this is a study, a documented idea, the patriarchal bargain of following traditional roles in order to be rewarded by the patriarchy, of looking a certain way, or behaving a certain way in order to be recognized by a system that rewards these things, right? Like good girls get married into rich houses. I'm just giving you an example. What is a good girl, right? Who is a good girl, and um, why must she follow these norms in order to be rewarded? But this is all part of patriarchy, and I really think it must go. Um, to me, the role that women who are sexually liberated, women who walk the streets at night, in clothes that they want to, I think they're doing important work. I think they're normalizing the reclaiming of space. They're normalizing our rights. They're normalizing, our voices. But every time that I end up advocating for this, for women to be out at night, to loiter, to reclaim spaces, to wear what you want to, I'm often left with this conundrum. Now, although I do it clearly because I hang out with men who rape in addas, but I'm always left with the conundrum of whether I'm advocating for the political over safety, over personal. And that is my conundrum. Every time I go to colleges and talk about this, I'm thinking, am I like just telling these individual girls to put themselves in danger? So I have to balance protectionism as well with this ideology. Having said that, at least online, I always tell women, just go right ahead, forget the trolls, enjoy the trolls because they're increasing your engagement. Forget them if you have to, but just speak, because there are really no real consequences of the rape threats that we get online. Um, Most of the time, it's just like, as we know, the person who issued these big rape threats to Dhoni's daughter was some 16-year-old boy. So there is no real danger. I think we should reclaim our voices, at least online. And slowly we should push boundaries within our families and our environment as well. So modern women are very important to dismantling the patriarchy.
I think I agree. I mean, we all together will have to kind of come out of our little spaces of safety, bit by bit, and slowly but surely we'll have to just kind of come out and reclaim what is our space too, what is our place too. So we'll all have to do that. Leading on the from this last thought as well. I'll ask this, in our society, sexual assault may have been, it's normally dealt with a lot of these questions such as what was she doing out, something that you already spoke about. What was she doing out so late? Why was she with him? What was she doing alone? Why did she have such short, skimpy clothes on? And finally, the question, what did she do to be raped? Right? But never the question, why did he do it? Right? Something that should really be an innate question, a natural response, is hardly ever asked. Why do you think that is the case, Tara?
Oh my God, do men want to take responsibility for things that their gender is doing? No. So, I mean, the narrative is patriarchal, and that's part of the reason why we've always had this conversation about blaming the victim. And it's such it has so many consequences, right? It means that not only do women who are raped feel responsible and guilt and shame and all of these things, but also it prevents us from going out because kuch ho jayega. So it prevents us from claiming our space in the sun. And so I do think that the sole reason that this narrative exists is because the narrative was set by the men. And we need to change that. We need to say, you know, we have the right to wear what we want to wear, be where we want to be, do what we want to do, and we have a right to do it safely. So yeah, it's quite a simple answer.
बहुत बड़ा षड्यंत्र है is what I can see, right? It comes from top there. Okay, so given all that we have discussed so far, something that we've been discussing out of the space as well, do you think that the Me Too movement actually has teeth enough to rip apart the rape culture that is so deep entrenched in our society?
No. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. I feel that the Me Too movement was very important, is very important. But do I think it's enough? No, not at all. The court of social media, of the media and public opinion cannot replace a country's justice system. Now, I think this is very important to say because as much as I was part of Me Too, and I've had two very bad workspace experiences that I talked about quite a bit as well, I feel that the battle cannot rely solely on the pens of some empowered survivors, because not all survivors, even women who thrive after sexual violence, want to talk about it. And it cannot rely on the pens of feminists. The punishment cannot be some nebulous social censure. But even this, the access to redress on social media, Me Too India, etc., is a privilege that is not available to a Dalit village woman. So this is not to say that Me Too and Me Too India were not necessary. They were. And when Me Too came to India in 2017 and then in 18, it was a heady cultural moment. And I look back at it and I call it a mixed success, because some of the accused have faced legal and social and economic consequences, some more severe than others, and others have not. But to me, this is not enough. What has also happened is the backlash has heightened the paranoia and polarization around the false rape complaint. And, you know, hashtag not all men and hashtag men too trend intermittently on Twitter. So is the Me Too movement welcome and necessary? Absolutely. But is it enough? Not nearly. There are so many criticisms, right? We are seeing a reluctance to face up to the fact that young men or even boys can do the same damage as their much older counterparts, because the men that are accused are usually in their 60s and they're past their age of commercial viability. And there is also this idea worldwide that the movement could not touch predators who are currently powerful. Now, this is triply unfortunate, as the most powerful men can make the most dangerous and prolific predators. Mm-hmm. They'll now be further emboldened at having escaped, this day of reckoning. And they have time and testosterone left in them. So I do think Me Too is important. Don't get me wrong. Me Too is incredibly important. But do I think that it is enough? Not at all. Not at all.
Right. So I'm getting a lot of questions from the audience. But before that, I'll just quickly ask this last question, Tara. we've talked enough about how we've been wronged and what all we can do to avoid these wrongs, and like avoid stepping out at night, be nicely clad and all those things. Before you leave us today, and before we start getting to
I'm
the
sorry. Your voice is,
hello, am I clear?
your voice is a
right
bit
now?
garbled, and I don't know whether that's me or.
Can you hear me
okay.
now, Tara?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can.
Yeah. Okay. So I was saying, there are, we've talked enough about, in fact, we keep hearing about how we can avoid all these, cases of violence and all these situations, and how to really avoid all these wrongs, avoiding stepping at night, being nicely clad and all those kind of sort of things. Before you leave us, do tell us what, according to you, we should do to right these wrongs. Something that must be done to correct, in the larger social milieu, to make India a safe place for women to live in, and not just kind of avoiding these wrongs, but really, we need to, as like how you said, the entire system needs to be changed. So what do you think are the first few steps?
Well, I think we need to raise feminist sons.
Okay.
But when I say raise feminist sons, I obviously mean that the parents need to be feminist as well. I mean, you can't raise a feminist son if you yourself believe that you believe in patriarchy. So I do think that we all need to be feminists. We must all be feminists. And essentially subscribing to cultural liberalism as a way of being is, to me, an important theoretical step to reduce traditional mores, to change our ways of being, to reduce violence, and particularly violence against women, where we see all human beings as equal with rights of their own. The other thing that I know this is really, I always laugh when I say this because people think I'm such a hippie, but it's true. I think it's very important that we prioritize love. And I mean love in the most, I do mean love within families. Like, as I said, we are a culture of hate, and there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of anger, which is also encouraged by the current political climate. Not only in India, but also in the US, we see a lot of interpersonal anger, violence, difference. So I do mean that kind of love, but I also think love is an answer to interpersonal violence from a romantic sense. So, while we have a culture that encourages arranged marriages, I actually think love marriages and love is a super important thing to reduce violence. Now, I'll tell you why, and I'm going to leave you with this. But basically, if you look at violence or sexual violence, as I described, in two very distinct ways, either you objectify the woman and you then think that your rights are more important than hers, or you personify her and you see her as fully human and you want to assert your power, anger, rage on her. In either case, if you've had a love marriage, it's harder, for instance, as versus an arranged marriage, it's harder for you to objectify this person because you love them. So it's harder for you to say, my rights are more important even if she's in pain. I will, have sex with her because I can and I should. It's also harder for you to cross that line where if you're angry in a relationship, that you're allowed to express that anger through rage, and your rage or anger or power through rape and through sexual violence. So love tends to be the answer on both ends of, if you look at sexual violence through this framework, love tends to be the answer at both sides. So I do think that we need to be feminist and subscribe to the ideology of cultural liberalism. And I do think we need to encourage love.
Love is the answer to everything.
Love is the answer. Absolutely.
So we'll take up questions from the audience, Tara. So I have this first question from
Sure.
Anju Chirumar. The question is, have you ever come across guilt and shame in a perpetrator without him being punished or caught for the crime?
Yes, I have. I have. But it's not the norm. One of my perpetrators, Abbas, who I have to say, my heart went out to him. He had a really rough life, and if I didn't know that he was a man who had raped, I really did like him. But however, this is not the norm. There have been lots of studies that have said that men who are in jail for rape, even those who were in jail, found rape a rewarding experience. Now, exponentially so, as you would imagine, if they've never been to jail even and never had any consequences, then though 100% reward, no guilt, no shame. So I don't think this is the norm. It is not the norm. It's usually just there's no guilt, shame. There's this sense of achievement and having gotten away.
So Anju Chirumar asked another question. Did you ever come across a man who justifies rape as a reaction to women's empowerment, directly as a thought of anger or even indirectly as a justification?
Oh, absolutely. I have this one subject, and he was, so this is the story he told me. There was this house guest that was living in a family, like a distant family person's house. And he had seen her. She came from a different village, and this was in Jammu and Kashmir. This was in the Kathua district before the Kathua district became as famous or infamous as it did. And he told me that this girl was talking to the boys in the village. And so he went to her and said, don't talk to boys. It's giving it's going to spoil the other girls in the village. And she said, tum kaun hote ho? It's my life. I'll do what I want to. And so then in the afternoon, when he knew the men were away in the khet or whatever, he goes and he says, the word he used was mental. Mental ho gaya tha. And he's gone and he has broken down the door and he has raped her to teach her a lesson. So yes, of course, this is absolutely true that this happens. And I have met one of these men who admitted to this being the case.
Nice. Okay, so Charu from Hyderabad chapter asks, have you met any men who have justified their action after rape? Or do you know of any? So that's the direct question. Or I think what she may be is trying to ask is, do you know of any men who try to justify their action immediately after rape? Or I think, is that
justification? I mean, of course, my mental ho gaya tha, or I know she was in pain, but it's my right to have sex with her, or that's not rape. Rape is when there is a knife involved, or there are 2 or 3 people. Forcing my girlfriend to have sex with me is not rape. That's just sex. It's coercion. But that's just what we call coercion is what he calls convincing. And I think that's just an aspect. This coercion, sex through coercion, is just another facet of our own romantic ideas of, no means yes, and nana karte pyar tum hi se kar baithe. So a woman's no actually means yes on coercion. So of course there are lots of justifications that I've heard.
Tara, there are so many other questions that I would have, I myself would love to ask. There are topics that are still so unexplored and untalked about, things like child abuse, marital rape. Those are the topics I really wanted to touch upon. But sadly and unfortunately, we have people who joined us from various, cities and chapters. We will have to wind up this session. So that was our last question. Some other time, we would love to, in fact, touch upon those topics that we couldn't this evening. Tara, it was brilliant having you here. It was really nice. I thank you so much for taking up all these questions and all these issues so diligently. Your initiative and your courage is something I think is an inspiration for all of us. It so definitely is something for me. I have always been a rebel. I have done adventurous things myself, but this is something that I don't think even I could imagine doing myself. You have shown a lot of courage, Tara, going through all those addas and all those men's spaces, spending all those time with these men. Your method has been really, really something that should be commended. What you've been able to cull from these interviews isn't something we are unaware of, but it totally puts things into perspective for everyone over here. Thank you for tackling this issue, Tara. This is a question that all of us women have sometime or the other struggled with, and bringing it to us. I'll just say, in a country where rape is massively underreported, where few have faith in the police, and where half the population lives with fear of assault, many things, like you said, need to change, and we need to start right now. I'd now like to call upon our chairperson, chapter chairperson, Puja Garg, to please say a few words. Puja, over to you.
Tara, I think this has been a landmark session, simply because we openly discussed a topic which is more often than not spoken about in hushed tones behind closed doors. And I honestly salute not only your courage to approach such a subject, but also for doing your job so thoroughly and incisively. You spoke from your heart today, which was apparent in every statement you made. Your conviction, your lucidity made today's discussion an eye-opener for all of us here. And we hope that this conversation will go a long way in addressing sexual violence into the very center of the collective thinking, at least among our organization, and motivate us to promote the right of women and girls everywhere for equality and to be free from violence. Thank you once again for this session, and thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.
I'd like to now invite our Vice Chairperson, Ms. Seema Garg, to give a formal vote of thanks. Seema Garg. Seema Ghai, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, my bad. Seema Ghai is our Vice Chairperson for Lucknow chapter. Seema Ghai, you'll have to unmute yourself. No?
Okay, I think you just have to.
There's some technical issues. Yeah, we have her.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Why Men Rape is indeed a bold effort from a talented writer and a diligent researcher who chose to write a book about rape in India, which is, I think, a major pandemic now. Sometimes there are books that ask you to pause, think, and feel all kinds of emotions. They are heartbreaking, yet important. And your book says exactly that. To stop it, you need to see it and face it. It is tragic and painful, but we need to put an end to it. Thank you, Ms. Tara Kaushal, for taking the bold step to explore and write about this topic. Your work is appreciable, and we as women salute you for your brave initiative. Thank you, Ms. Puja Garg, our chapter chairperson, for thinking about this sensitive topic and having the strength to organize a session with an author who has done an in-depth research on it. It was insightful and eye-opening to hear Ms. Tara Kaushal. Thank you, Deepali Chopra, Chair for the day. Your questions, Deepali, were very well worded and managed to touch upon every query playing in the mind of the women who are here today regarding this heinous crime. The entire session was deeply engaging and very, very thought-provoking. I think it has all left us touched somewhere deep in our hearts. And, somewhere thankful also that God has saved us from situations and those around us, and a prayer to keep all the girls safe. Heartfelt gratitude to our sponsors without whom these programs are not possible. Liberty Shoes Private Limited, RG Infracity Private Limited, Shalimar Corp, Ekani, ABC Chashme Wale, Design Partner Wild Punch, Creative Partner Karan Lakhwani, and Digital Partner Now Lucknow. I would also like to thank our event, registration, print, and social media team. A special thanks to our governing body members who are present with us today, FLO members from Lucknow and other chapters, and all the other guests who have joined us today. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Tara Kaushal. It has been a pleasure and an honor to listen to you. And a thankfulness and a gratitude, has come from within. And we just pray that we will be living in a safer world and we will leave a safer world behind for the girls to come. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm quickly.
Thank you all so much. Yes, Pooja, sorry.
And I'm just quickly going to click a picture, and you all can unmute yourselves also if you wish to say something here to Tara before she leaves us. All the people who've joined us in here, you all can unmute yourselves. I think I've kind of, yeah. Okay, quickly a picture. Yes, please show yourselves. Please switch on your videos. That'll be really nice. I can only click pictures on webinars. That's it. I've been doing it for the entire year. So let's have it. Another one. I wish, Tara, you were here in person. Thank you so much. Thank you. You all can unmute yourselves.
I think you've...
yeah, I've asked.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. Thank you all our guests who took us, such time for this session. Yes, great. It was a nice session. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for so long, Tara. Seriously, it was really nice.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone. It was Deepali, Puja, Simi. Thank you very much. It was very insightful and the questions were phenomenal. Thank you. And I hope we have a world free of rape and violence and a feminist world.
And
I think we're all, yeah, and we have a feminist world, and that we're all part of that soon in our own ways. Bye.
Bye-bye, Tara.
Bye-bye, Tara. I know it's late there. I know it's late there now for you.
No, it's okay. In quarantine, time is irrelevant, really. So anyway, see you guys. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
See you soon in person. Bye-bye. Just stop it.